Before Islam, in the heart of Arabia, there lived a desert warlord. Cold-eyed and obsessed with purifying his bloodline, he issued a brutal edict. No girl shall walk beneath the sun bearing my name. The edict was carried by desert battalions, soldiers who rode into settlements at sunset, collecting newborn girls born under the sign of the waning crescent moon. Drums beat like slow heartbeats as mothers clutched their infants' clothes, veiled in sobs. One soldier stood out, Ayub, the youngest of his battalion. He looked at her tiny chest, so fragile, so new to life, and felt an unfamiliar pang in his chest. "How can we bury what has barely begun?" he whispered. But his captain only grunted, urging him onward to Bukit Lail, the high ridge in the desert where the sun never touched the ground till noon. There they laid all the babies to rest, placing them in woven baskets, filling the gaps with cinnamon bark, myrrh, and crushed date seeds. A priest chanted ancient verses, invoking desert spirits to harvest the silence of unwanted flesh. As sand was shoveled on top, the priest marked each burial with a sigil burned into the sandstone nearby. These would become spiritual anchors for later rituals. A scorpion crawled onto the priest's scroll and died. Ayub hesitated, placing her down gently. "Forgive us, Ya-Nur," he whispered, "child of light." He knew then that this was no ordinary burial. Years passed, the ridge was silent, marked only by stone sigils, each glowed faintly under moonlight. Traders whispered tales of objects vanishing, of children singing in empty courtyards. Nomads reported hearing the cries of babies on windless nights. In secret, a sect of mystics returned to Bukit Lail. They believed these buried girls had grown in spirit, and that their souls, bound to sigils, could be awakened for fortune or vengeance. One night, Ayabet, now elder and grief-stricken, broke into the burial site. He had lost his daughter, his son, and his wife, all to illness brought on by relentless sandstorms. Desperate to save his grandson, he decided to try to awaken the spirit he'd buried so long ago. He found the basket he'd marked all those years ago. It was untouched, the linen preserved by desert air. He recognized the scent of myrrh and crushed date seeds, and with trembling hands, he lifted the lid. Inside, a doll lay curled, seemingly asleep. With a gasp, Ayub reached out. But first, he needed to prepare. He boiled jasmine and blood in a clay pot, the recipe from an ancient book of shadows. He recited verses backwards from the priest's scroll, then offered a toy made from his daughter's old silver comb. And then she rose, small and glowing, hovering above the basket. "Ayub," she whispered, his name on her lips. She looked at him with eyes that held galaxies, both beautiful and terrifying. "You kept me here too long," she said, her voice echoing with power. "Now I am yours. What do you desire?" But she was no longer the innocent child he remembered. She carried memories of betrayal, of muffled cries, of being chosen not to live. Ayub named her Zara, meaning radiance. And though her voice was still childish, her smile was sharp and knowing. She helped him with theft, appearing as a wisp of smoke, slipping through cracks in walls, snatching jewels and coins from unsuspecting merchants. But one night, Ayub found her hovering over his sleeping grandson, her eyes gleaming with hunger. "Don't," he whispered, rushing to the cradle. Startled, Zara retreated, floating back into the jar. That night, Ayub sat beside the still sleeping child, fear gnawing at him. But what he really feared was the pact he hadn't kept, the blood tribute. Desperate, he resolved to fix his mistake. He took a deep breath and began his bargain, a pact of breath and blood. Every morning, a bowl of goat's milk warmed with cinnamon. Every evening, a toy carved from olive wood, always new, never repeated. Once a day, a sweet made from honey and crushed dates, and every third night, 3 drops of his blood from his left big toe. And once a year, during the desert eclipse, he must find menstrual blood from a virgin girl. This he dreaded the most, forcing him to barter with mystics and midwives on the edge of society. In return, Zara must wear a silver anklet he crafted, etched with her sigil, a spiral of sand and bone. If she removed it, she would lose her voice for 7 days. But even with the ritual, Zara grew restless. When Ayub missed a blood offering during a sandstorm, she became more agitated. She whispered to the grandson in his sleep, teaching him words in a forgotten tongue. She was becoming a legacy, a curse that could pass into bloodlines. Zara was the birth of the first Toyol. And so, with a heavy heart, Ayub set her free, guiding her towards the setting sun, towards the Malay archipelago. There she found new masters, new stories. In Indonesia, she became the Toyol, bound by coconut husks and turmeric. In Thailand, known as Cuminlay, her jars were gilded, her rituals sweetened with milk and honey. And in Malaysia, her essence split. Some Toyols still speak Zara's words, in Meccan dialect, confused yet loyal. Others grew darker, hungrier, forever craving the taste of human breath and blood. Infanticide, the deliberate killing of an infant, particularly female infant. It was a common practice among some pre-Islamic Arabian tribes. This practice was driven by various socioeconomic factors, including poverty, fear of dishonor, and a preference for male offspring who could protect and further the family's lineage. It was performed often within the first year of life to silence the weak, the unwanted, or the dishonored. In Zara's tale, it was not just a crime. It was the beginning of a curse, the end.